Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show, where we interview global thought leaders on business, leadership, and life. Here's your host, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and chief burnout officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network, Michael Levitt.
Welcome back. I've got Anthony Mongiello on the line. Anthony, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am awesome. Really looking forward to this conversation because it's something of interest to me and a lot of my listeners. But why don't you share a little bit about you and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, so Anthony Mongiello. I have a long corporate career before I jumped into being an entrepreneur. So 20 plus years in the corporate world, working for commercial property casualty insurance companies, global organizations like AXA, XL. And so went from a pretty conservative industry, a conservative career, to jumping into entrepreneurship in a brand new bleeding edge environment. So it's been fun.
In that environment is non-fungible tokens or NFTs. And see, I know what they are. But some of my listeners may only know it as NFTs or, you know, there's always these acronyms in the world that no one really knows what it stands for. But it's important for people, as we said in the pre-show conversation, to understand what NFTs are. I mean, yes, they may be familiar with them of images and whatnot, but there's more to it than that. So what drove you to get involved in this? And obviously leaving, I don't want to say a comfortable career, but you know, it's pretty consistent.
Sure.
Yes, there's ups and downs in insurance and all that. And it's, you know, one of the stable things because people, it doesn't matter, you know, recessions, inflation, all that stuff, people still need to be insured. So what drove you from that to, you know, diving into entrepreneur world, and then especially something that is a little bit more bombastic, for a lack of a better term, than the insurance industry? And I used to work in insurance a long time ago in IT. So I know the flavor. I know what it tastes like. So, you know, what drove you to do it?
Yeah, so in the insurance world, I was very much responsible for strategy, transformation, so technology strategy, looking at change management, disruptive technologies. So I've always been heavily involved in the tech space, at least from an insurance perspective. But specifically, I was obviously we've been hearing about crypto for a while, and that's been out there, and it was never my thing. It's like, okay, digital currency sounds interesting. You know, wake me up when it's a reality kind of deal, right? So I'm not a speculative person at all. For me, you know, I when I invest, I always invest on value. I stay away from the growth stuff. And so for me, it was always about practicality, and digital currency just wasn't there yet, isn't there yet. But I started hearing Mark Cuban, Gary Vee. I heard them talking about NFTs. And so for me, I was like, okay, I respect them. I respect them from a business perspective. You know, Mark Cuban, Gary Vee, you know, they capitalized on the internet in the .com days and email marketing. And I was like, okay, from a business perspective, I should probably pay attention to this if they are. So I started looking into it a little bit more. And I always liked collectibles as a kid, you know, Garbage Pail Kids and baseball cards and comic books. So there was a little collectible aspect to it. And I was like, oh, look at these little images. That's interesting. So I opened up my laptop. I was like, oh, let me go buy a bunch of them, not knowing exactly how much they were. I opened up my laptop and they're like $30,000 each. Closed my laptop. I was like, okay, this isn't for me. But then I started hearing more and more about it, especially with Gary Vee, and he was talking about some of the practical aspects of it. And then he launched his own collection in May of 2021, and I bought in on that. And when I did, I didn't realize the community aspect that was associated with NFTs. And there was just a very robust and engaging community. And I was kind of blown away by that. I was like, wow, this is something special here. All these people coming together with this kind of energy. So I started getting more involved in other NFT projects, raised my hand and was volunteering my time. And then it struck me that a new business model was forming, a business model where it wasn't company and customers at arm's length with customer service departments and all this other stuff in between. You know, there was direct access between the people that were leading companies and the people that cared about the companies the most from the outside. And so I look at these communities not quite as customers. They're not shareholders either, but they're certainly stakeholders. They're people that are invested in the brand. They're invested in the project, and they want to contribute and participate. And that seemed like a new business model to me. I've always led with culture and led with influence over authority. And this seemed like an extension of that, from within the corporate walls to leading outside the corporate walls, and really having the opportunity to create something special with people outside the company participating.
When you opened up your laptop and started seeing the prices of the images, you're thinking you weren't expecting to be looking at the price of, Action Comics #1 or Amazing Fantasy 15.
Exactly.
You're like, let's put those back down. But the thing of it is, what's so nice about this is a new industry that is creating, and it's bringing in creative people to create. That's the one thing that I've noticed about this particular launch compared to the .com. Yes, the .com was creative, but it had its structure. Even if it was kind of loose, it still had some structure to it that was mimicking the way we did things before, how businesses were launched and all of that, where this has been, let it create and let it see, let's be creative in the thoughts of what we can use this for when it comes to businesses and people being, having amazing access to an organization, to contracts, to all the red tape that we normally have to deal with when it comes to executing a contract or buying a house or all this stuff. The technology has made it easy for us to buy a home on our phone. None of that writer's cramp after signing, this much paperwork on things. It's like you get it all squared away, and it's like, okay, but then you're like, okay, well, how do I get the email? All right, well, here's this PDF. It could be edited and all this stuff, where it's with NFTs and the technology, it's like it's a digital fingerprint in many cases. And I guess I definitely want people to go to, and I'll let you share about it in a minute, understanding more on NFTs and the different technologies that exist today. And we'll go forward a year from now, you'll be adding more courses on that because there's going to be new ways of doing things. It's going to be.
And one of the things that we found too is some of the issues that are out there in the rest of the world are present within this space as well. And so social engineering is a huge risk factor for people in the NFT space. But taking a step back though, I think it's important for people to understand that NFTs aren't magic. There's no magic in technology. And at its core, NFTs are backed by a technology called blockchain. And all blockchain is a public ledger. So it's a ledger that keeps track of an alphanumeric string that identifies an asset called an NFT, a non-fungible token. That means there's one and only one of them on that blockchain. And then there's another alphanumeric string that is attached to your wallet, your digital wallet, and it says that you own that asset. And the blockchain keeps track of all of those transactions and where that asset is transferred from one ownership to another. And the trick of it is that it's public, so that anybody who goes onto the blockchain can view who owns a particular asset at what point. And so now, if it's just this alphanumeric string, what makes it so special? Well, you can attach additional data elements to that string, an image being one of them. And so we see these images that are being traded for high values. But to me, it's no different than a VIN number on a car. The VIN number is on your title, but then you have the other information, make, model, year. And NFTs are similar, where they have this additional data called metadata attached to that token. Now, imagine your title of your car being an NFT. Well, today, DMV, Department of Motor Vehicle, is the ledger. It's the register. That's why you got to register your car. So they keep track of who owns what. So you've got to go to DMV every time you want to make a transaction or do something with your car. If it was on this public ledger, you and we can say, hey, I'll transfer this title to your wallet. You transfer me some money or whatever else. And that's the exchange, and it happens immediately. So it's an instantaneous transaction without having to jump through the hoops of gatekeepers and intermediaries like the Department of Motor Vehicle, which we all love.
Yes, collectively, billions of hours of human existence have died at the DMV. And no offense to people that work for them. I actually have a neighbor that used to work for them, and she's not she didn't fit the personality of what you typically see people in there. That's why I always found it weird that she worked there. But at the end of the day, it's utilizing technology, authenticating things so you know it's true and real. And being able to exchange things in a way that cuts out, as you said, a lot of the middle people, the red tape, all of that to make things easier, which then, again, makes it easier for us to conduct life and business and all kinds of different things in a variety of different components, whether it's from a collectible standpoint to validate, yes, this is an actual, autographed copy, for example, of a magazine, or this is an actual real existing thing that's been authenticated because it's on the blockchain. Anybody can go look at it. There's the address. Yep, there it is. And it cuts out a lot of the fraudulent things that unfortunately so many people get burned by.
It does. And I love the removing gatekeepers and intermediaries aspect of it. That's one of the things that hit one of my core values, which is to give power to the individual and open up opportunity for everybody to be able to execute and have that flexibility, that freedom of their assets. You think about even the social platforms, Twitter or Instagram. You don't own your ID on there. You don't own your identity. That identity is within the Twitter platform. It's within the Instagram platform. Now imagine if your digital identity, you start managing your digital identity on the blockchain, and it's showing everything that you've done and accumulated within an NFT. They're talking now about soul-bound NFTs, meaning NFTs that can't be bought or transferred or traded. And so this is going to be a way for us to track our diploma, our marriage certificate, and all of these things that we accumulate through our life. We'll be able to track readily available on the blockchain, so you don't have to worry about making sure it's in a fireproof safe, because if the house goes, then how are you going to get all of that important documentation back?
Well, that's, I think of, for caregivers and people that are taking care of loved ones and loved ones pass, and you're like, okay, where did they keep the will? Where's their documentation? Where's the information regarding who they owe money to as far as creditors and mortgage payments, all that stuff is just an absolute nightmare for people to deal with, on top of the fact that, they've lost a loved one. Having this technology available where it's like, okay, let's go find that, that soul footprint, as you mentioned. It's like, okay, here's mom's information and it's there. And it's like, okay, now we need to know, okay, and the technology will have it where we can say, okay, we can notify all the stakeholders.
Correct.
And say, mom has passed. And then that, of course, creates the next steps of all the things that need to be addressed according estate planning, all these things.
Automated too.
Yeah. And
automation, the contract part, that's one of the beauties of the NFTs. In addition to this metadata, NFTs have a smart contract tied to them. And all the smart contract is a set of code that is executed based on a transaction on that particular NFT. And it's all automated. So you imagine this soul-bound token, and you change the flag to deceased, and it executes the transaction based on what was agreed in somebody's will. That's the will right there. And all of those transactions just execute. So instead of having to go through this whole estate process, that smart contract that's agreed and signed by that person ahead of time really just gets executed the way they wanted it to.
Yeah, the mind just starts when I start thinking about all of the potential aspects of this. It's astronomical how much it could be done. And I think it boils down to, and I tell people this, my word for this year is simplicity. And that's one of the things that this technology and the blockchain can provide, is simplification of a lot of those hurdles that we had to deal with. And even in the onset of the pandemic, when people needed to get access to certain things and you couldn't, or was it real easy to? And it was, I think, expedited, a lot of the thinking about this. Now it's all about the application, going, okay, let's get this set up and have it flow. And unfortunately, as humans, sometimes we complicate things where the blockchain can make it simpler, and sometimes we overcomplicate because we want to say, all right, we're going to do it. We've done it this way. It's like, well, why are we adding those extra 15 steps? It'll do it in 2. And it's going to be an interesting dynamic to watch how this all progresses.
It will, and it'll be a progression for sure, because we're in that pre .com stage of 1997, 1998, where there's a lot of hype. A lot of things are irrational and don't make sense. And it'll take, people like ourselves who are building, real businesses and real brands, that you have enough people that are building those real businesses and real brands that start to weave through some of the noise and the speculation. And then people can start seeing real players and build the trust and the credibility. And that's one of the things that we wanted to lead with on the Bulls and Apes project. When we started it, was education. And so we have an NFT 101 course that's free, 30 minutes, 11 modules, 2 to 3 minutes each. So very, very bite-sized, consumable. We hired professional actor, professional actress to shoot them. So it's well put together. We also have an NFT security course, because one of the things that's really important to know with NFTs and the blockchain is we say it's decentralized, and we say there's no gatekeeper and there's no intermediary. And that sounds great to everybody, right? Oh, that's what I want. That's what I want. But it comes with significant responsibility, because there's no 1-800 number to call. If you transfer something to the wrong wallet, it's gone. It's whatever wallet that is that you transferred, you own your asset. You have full ownership and control over your assets. So it's really important that people understand the security around managing their NFTs and managing their assets on a blockchain, because there's no do-overs.
Yeah, there's, like you said, there's no toll-free number to call and say, I made a mistake and I just transferred my picture of this dog that I bought and it's worth $1 million, and somebody just got $1 million NFT, and they're quite thankful for it. And unless they feel, oh, wait a minute, I didn't mean to get this. They're like, woohoo, let's go. And there's not, well, you shouldn't get, it's complete ownership. And it's like leaving your wallet somewhere and saying, okay, that'll be fine. No one's going to touch it. Well, someone may touch it. So it's a case that it's accountability. And I think that's one thing. I'm glad you did the security one, because it's important for people to realize you got to, no multitasking here. If you're making a transfer, like with crypto, they always tell you, it's like, if you're going to make a transfer, do a small one first, $10, $50, whatever. And then it's like, you're going to be transferring a large amount. That's like, maybe break it up a little bit. Cause if you fat finger a number, it's like, oh, it's one number off. Yeah. It might as well be 1 million numbers off, because it's not going where it's supposed to.
No, and we had a big event on January 5th and had about 1.5 million in sales. And I was the one responsible for moving it from the smart contract to our treasury wallet. And I was doing $1. Okay, did it work? Yeah. That's when you were quite attentive. And anybody, pets, kids, people got phones off. You're like, no, I'm just look at this. And it's a big deal, because, but it's important, but it's also freeing to be able to have that kind of control and immediate access to things where you don't have to go through all the hoops for everything. So in closing, where do you see the space going in the next couple of years? I don't want to say 5 years, because who knows what's going on in 5 years. But in the immediate, what I'm seeing as trends, so the digital collectible aspect of it is something that people are leaning more into, and having some gamification elements to collecting NFTs. That's something that we're leaning heavy into. One of the other things that takes that a step further is gaming. I am certain, I've got 3 daughters, 15, 11, and 9, and I've given a lot of money to Roblox. And that stays there, right? And you can imagine if that was with NFTs and they were able to then take all of that work that they've done when they're bored with the game and then pass that along either to a younger cousin or a younger sibling, or sell them. as NFTs, and for people that want to have a leg up on getting started with the game. So I think gaming is ripe for it. The other, we're seeing music pick up too, where new upcoming artists are sharing their original songs and building community around it. And we're seeing artists build these communities of fans. You think about, garage bands that you've seen, or local bands that you've seen at bars or at clubs, and you want to support them. Imagine if they had NFTs and you could actually own part of their work. And what if they became on to become a famous band, and you owned one of their early recordings and you owned a piece of it? We're seeing that with on the music side. So music NFTs, I think, are going to be a trend. So for me, I think it's gaming and music are the two trends over the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, and those are both industries that get a ton of traction. And I think as a consumer, it's like, if I know, again, nothing against the labels or anything like that, but if I know that I'm going to spend $10 and that artist is going to get most of that because of their creativity, that's something that I personally going to go, I'd rather do that than to pay for a streaming service, not going to mention any names, and they get, 0.2 of a penny or whatever they happen to pay out on some of the artists. So it's like, you support those, especially those local bands, because, they're lugging all that equipment in their van. They're working day jobs. They're doing all that kind of stuff. And, they have dreams, and to be able to be a part of it and go, oh, wow, I'm going to invest, because it's really an investment in a way in them. And it turns out they do well. Then, you can either monetize it yourself and sell it off, or say, you know what, I'm so glad that I put that $10 into that. Now it's worth whatever, but I don't care. I'll never sell it because I still love that band, and they know me on a first name basis. And that's something special about that. So Anthony, I've loved this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and this amazing work?
So bullsandapes.com is the website. It's pretty in depth. We've got a story behind our characters. You'll see our characters, but most importantly, the education's there. So the NFT 101 course, the NFT security course. So if you're curious about NFTs, we just ask you to be educated, do it safely. It's a fun, very, very fun, exciting industry. The digital collectibles bring me back to being a kid, and it brings a lot of our community back to being a kid too. So there's a lot of fun with it, but you got to be smart, be educated first.
There you go. And I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So Anthony, again, thank you so much for educating our audience on this. And I highly encourage people to check out your website and get educated a little bit more, because this is the future, ladies and gentlemen, and it's really important for you to be educated. So Anthony, thanks again for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show, part of the Breakfast Leadership Network. Visit breakfastleadership.com for tips on empowering your business and your life.